Is that better? That's up close and personal with the microphone, and it gets me nervous sometimes. The first item on our agenda is to approve our minutes from our April 5th meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the April 5th, 2023 meeting minutes.
Second?
So Lee's the motion. Ariana, was that you on the second? Any changes, corrections, errors, omissions, anything on the minutes?
I found one thing. Tom Bach's name is not spelled correctly on page 9, line 37. Oh, there's another one, line 18 on that same page.
What page was that, Lee?
Page 9. It's spelled B-O-K instead of B-O-C-K.
Okay. All right. Anybody have anything else? All those in favor of approving the minutes as amended, please say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? No. I should have introduced everybody here. That we have our 4 select board members here, and we have Heather Chase via Zoom from the Capitol. So she's still up there plugging away on the state issues. Another item is that I asked permission to add an agenda item towards the end, and we need an executive session for a personnel issue, and that would come after 11. It would be the new 12, and then after that. So, just to let everybody know. Citizens' comments. If there is someone here that would like to address the board regarding an issue that is not on the agenda, now would be the time to do so. Are there any citizens' comments?
Good evening. I'll try to keep this as brief as I can.
Give us your name, Bill.
Bill Lindsay.
Thanks.
I read the minutes thoroughly. I was at the last selectmen's meeting and made the mistake of leaving the meeting early. I say the mistake because I understand there were additional discussions, and those discussions had to do with the planning board for the most part. Tom Bach served on, as your minutes reflected, on the planning board while being a selectman, and I did as well. I gathered that the discussion centered, and this is why I'm somewhat confused, about a conflict of interest policy, which I've read several times. I'm not sure exactly how it applies to our local government here, other than the obvious, if you have a pony in the race and you're not telling people that you own the pony, there could be a problem. I think some of it, conflict of interest, is self-explanatory. I raised this issue because it appears that the conflict of interest policy, from what I gathered, had to do with a planning board member stepping away to satisfy the particular issue. I could be incorrect on this. You can correct me with my statements, but I wish to bring this up. There was no problem with selectmen serving on the planning board prior years. In one case, it actually was really a good thing. We had at that time, the select board had what they called a reading file. Minutes of planning board information went into the reading file so the selectmen could understand what happened at those meetings. Now, I did understand from what I read in the minutes, there was a question of communication between the two boards. In some cases, I do see selectmen at planning board meetings. I do attend probably 90% of the planning board meetings. One, because I had prior experience, and two, some of the meetings in recent years were not, in my own opinion, in the interest of the overall community. Some of the board members on the planning board were having difficulty getting along. that seemed to improve greatly. And it improved, one, as a citizen hearing, it looks like your planning board is doing a better job. I think that's a good thing to know and hear out in the public. So I made myself some notes about why this changed, and I had to rethink some of the ideas of what the select board does and what the planning board does. The planning board is an instrument, really, of some sort of economic development for a town and its citizens. That board is listed actually as a quasi-board. It does not have legislative power, nor does it have legislative approval. So what I'm basically saying, if you had a select board member on a planning board, it would be just a one vote. The board, whatever planning board, try to keep these straight, whatever the planning board has adopted is discussed. Sometimes there is a vote. I would say over the years, I very rarely see a dissenting vote, which is the right, obviously, to do. But overall, when all is said and done, the next, and this is the most important thing, whatever the board adopts, and they're working on changes now, these will be presented to the select board. The select board then conducts a public hearing. So the process that we currently have in place, realistically, it's hard to say that our policy here would really help any particular conflict of interest between the board themselves discussing, this is planning board, and then bringing it to the select board, and then having a public meeting for important comments. I think people would have a good feeling if there was something that wasn't quite Hoyle. Now, I bring this to your attention because one of the items, really been a hot item for a long time, is Airbnbs. Now, I sat out in the audience at planning board when this was discussed, and I will tell you that the first comment by one of the planning board members was Peter Hudkins. Peter Hudkins, at that time, indicated that he indeed had an Airbnb. So I'm having a little difficulty understanding how this conflict of interest policy is somewhat have rose some type of a roost that the man should step down. I never served particularly with Peter on that board, but there's been a wealth of knowledge, and it takes a wealth of knowledge through all the changes that the planning board has gone through over the years. I did sit out in this audience when the planning board had great hearings and had great difficulty convincing the public at these hearings that everything was okay. Everything was not okay, and the town then suggested that we do a rewrite of the zoning regulation. So the point I'm making here is I think the process is such, unfortunately, there are people here tonight, which is really good to see, because in most cases, the planning board is, nobody attends the planning board until the zoning administrator says, you can't do that. Well, then we have all kinds of people want to change the regulations. So I find the conflict of interest policy not suitable in this case. Two former select board members have served in a capacity here. There's never been a dispute or a charge of conflict of interest, and I recommend that we replace, put Mr. Hudkins back in that spot. That's a board decision, and I understand that well, but I wanted to bring this to the board's attention for reconsideration. The other thing I did notice, that I do try to follow the notices in the paper. I did not see that the two positions now that are open were advertised in the regular paper. Maybe I missed the notification, but it seemed rather quick that we had a selectmen's meeting, man resigned, and in less than a week or 2 weeks, we have new members applying for the board. And I'm welcome to see new members. I think that should be done. But that's what I have to say on the issue, and I hope that you consider what I said, but how the process really works. The select board is the legislators. The planning board is not. I think there's room in here to accommodate the years of work. One thing that came to mind is on an economic basis. Nobody directed the man to do it, but we're looking for housing. One of the biggest things we need is housing in this town that could help to add to the grand list. And there has to be some get-together between the planning board, who's trying to recommend it, and the select board to make this happen. There was mention at town meeting and discussion, the increase to the grand list. I realize a lot of people don't understand the grand list. Educate yourself on the grand list and what it does. The town is going to have larger electric bills, larger fuel bills, going to need more police. I understand we're getting into mental services now for the police department. All this costs money. We need to increase the grand list. The boards need to work together. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
I can make a quick comment on some of the things that you said, Bill, and we can't have a discussion on this. It was advertised as far as the openings for the planning commission and stuff.
I didn't see it. That's
Yeah.
it.
And the process, if we were going to change our minds about how it worked out with Peter and stuff, we would have to first address the policy that says that he can't do that. So that's, could be something that comes up in the future, but it's not a one-step thing. It would be a two-step thing. We would have to change our written policy to allow that, because that policy was changed in 2016 after Tom Bach had served on it. And that's our policy that's been in place. So we're just adhering to the policy right now.
Okay, well, then I would recommend that the board look at that policy, because I believe there's no state statute under Vermont law that would prohibit that.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
I know there's some new folks that just came into the meeting, and we're under citizens' comments right now. If there's someone here that would like to address the board regarding an issue that is not on the agenda, now would be the time to do so. Are there any other citizens' comments here or on Zoom? Hearing none, we'll go on to our next item, which is old business. And Julie, can you take us to our old business list?
I can. The first item, it's been a busy couple weeks. The first item is the solar field. Lee and I finally were able to meet with Greenbacker. I don't know that we actually accomplished anything, but we did finally have a conversation with them. They do obviously have, concerns about the appraisal that we received. They have gone out to get their own appraisal. We are waiting on that value to come in. And they have sent an email that Lee is going to review, because I don't understand what they're talking about, with different industry standards that they don't agree with in our appraisal. So the one thing that they have agreed to do is to reimburse the town the $5,000 that we spent on our appraisal, which is good and interesting. But we'll see what their appraisal comes back with. So stay tuned yet again, but there's more coming. So last night, we had our first Citizen Advisory Committee meeting for the police department. It was a great meeting. We had a lot of good discussion, a good start. So the next meeting has been advertised as the second Tuesday in May. It has now been actually moved as of this morning. They will be meeting the third Tuesdays of each month. And a member had a conflict once they got home and realized that the second Tuesday is a problem. So they will be meeting the third Tuesdays of each month here at Town Hall at 6:30. Frank Kelly has been nominated as chair to that committee, with Vince being vice chair and Wendy Germain as the clerk secretary. So, like I said, good discussion. I think it's going to be some positive stuff coming from that committee. Follow-up to the Julian Corey, obviously, this is steady and leading towards legal, so not a lot of discussion can take place at this point in an open session. Only to say that Preston is working with Julian per the advice of the attorney on the violations that we can easily address. Jim will be issuing you an opinion on the process that he feels we will be following. And just to give you kind of a heads up as to guidance, there are no quick turnarounds here. It's a very legal, very structured process to deal with this, but there is work that is taking place. Many conversations are being had. So the board should stay tuned. There is a legal document coming from Jim to outline steps for you and the process that we will be going through.
Do we have any mechanism for keeping the concerned community members informed? Are we relying on them going to the website and looking at the minutes of the meeting, or are we engaged with them in any way?
So Preston is engaged with some of them. We have not emailing. We don't have a group email because the town has to be a little bit careful there. But we have given Mike and Cheryl Leclerc high-level updates that I believe they are sharing with the community, is my understanding.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And Julie, hi, it's Heather. Could we keep that on the old minutes thread, so we just keep in touch with that?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep. The Housing Committee, we haven't talked about this in a while. The board, several months ago, we had this discussion. The board had kind of given this permission for me to start thinking about an ad hoc kind of housing discussion. I've done a fair amount of research, and this will be on an agenda item coming up. This is not for you to make a decision today, more for you to be thinking about. I would really like to stand up a true housing commission for Chester. It's a process, but I think it's something that we could benefit from. There are a lot of programs, as many of us have probably heard, there's a lot of programs out now, and a lot of new ones that are just getting started up that will remain, even after ARPA money and IIJA money and all that is gone. But I think it would be good to have a commission. Number one, the standard steps, review what are our needs, identify lots, and the Planning Commission is doing a fair amount of this work. So this commission would work very closely with the Planning Commission as well. And I think it's such a long-term process to resolve these issues, and a long-term process to look at how we can create housing in Chester, that I think instead of just having a one-time, one-off committee, I think actually having a housing commission for a long period of time is the direction we're heading and what we're needing. So we'll have a formal discussion about this because you can't really enter old business, but I just wanted you guys to be thinking about that because it is a big deal, and the Planning Commission will be invited to a meeting, and I think this needs to be a big discussion, but I think we're at that point more than just advising the town manager type discussion. I think it'd be good to have an actual commission.
It seems like it would be a good collaboration.
Yeah.
Between the Planning Commission and the Housing Committee, because the Planning Commission seems like they're doing a lot of work in that area right
Yes.
now.
Yep.
And to have
And
a
the
little more
Housing
input.
Commission can go from there, and, because the Planning Commission is going to have time to deal with all of that. It's just not, they don't. So this is another group that deals only with housing that can work very closely with the Planning Commission. So I plan on attending a Planning Commission meeting coming up, but I wanted to inform the board before I just do that, to just let you know that's coming. The Pinnacle work that Green Mountain Power is doing, the electrical changeovers up there. We've known the work is coming. We did not know it was happening this year. So it was not budgeted. So the conduit and the work that we are going to need to do to the pool and running the electric while they're there, that cost is coming in around $20,000 to $25,000 is what we're expecting, and of course that is unbudgeted funds. So I'm just not to deal with at the moment, but I just wanted in your back of your minds when we have a financial update, we'll talk about that, but just to know that that's there and an expense we'll need to deal with.
This is because the power company is helping us, doing something for us, running the power at the end of Pinnacle, is that right?
So Green Mountain Power.
But they're just doing it sooner than we expected?
So this project has been in the works for
4 or 5 years.
at least 3 or 4, I think even longer than, yeah, it's been a long time.
Okay.
They are replacing a bunch of their lines.
Yep.
And it's coming across the town property, they're burying it. While they are doing that, they have also agreed, we had, Steve Mancuso could speak to this way much better, sorry to put you on the spot,
That's
Steve.
okay.
There is some work that they are doing, there's some changeover that we have to do with the electric to the pool, 3-phase to 1-phase, I may have that backwards. But while they are here, we have been saying we were gonna have them run some power so that we could potentially have lights at the pool, lights at the baseball fields, all of this stuff. And all of a sudden, they showed up and said, oh, we're here and we're doing it now. And we're like, oh.
Just like
Great.
being homeowners.
We did.
It's a big upgrade for the whole area. The power lines used to run over the overhead, they're through the woods in different areas. So anything that's going to be on the Pinnacle property, on the rec department property, the town property, is getting buried underground. And as they're doing that, is the time to upgrade for all the facilities that we have underground also. So it'll actually, it'll be a definite improvement for all the infrastructure that's there for things that we have and for things that could happen in the future too. Lights maybe for the ball field, to tennis courts up in the back. So they're doing all that and they're taking it all into consideration at this point, which is a real positive thing for the town.
And you got to talk into your mic, yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I was just talking about the upgrades at the Pinnacle and the power. This thing is,
I know, I know. So the only other item, Arnie, that I have is, so I have learned about a grant opportunity. The letters of interest are due Friday. And then you get invited to apply. So it's the Northern Borders Regional Commission grant. Vermont is allowed to apply now. They have a bunch of the IIJA money that's coming. And one of the projects that we've been talking about that would fit potentially is a community center expansion to the pool house up at the Pinnacle, which of course was a big conversation that was had when we were talking about ARPA funds. I'm going to submit the letter of interest only because it doesn't bind us. Steve and Matt and I have been actually talking about this for about a year now. This money would contribute about 70% of the project. But the benefit of this grant is you can use other federal grants to match it, which is very rare. So the other thing that we are talking about doing, and we've been talking about doing with this building, is because we would be brand new construction, it could also become a true emergency shelter in Chester, and so that opens you up to the emergency shelter FEMA dollars. So it's all kind of in concept, but I want to get the letter of interest submitted. It's not binding us to anything. We may not even get invited to apply. But I feel like it's a good opportunity to at least start looking at that. IAJ money won't be around for a long time. This is kind of one-time big dollars.
what is IAJA?
IIJA, the Investment in Jobs Act, it came after ARPA.
Okay.
It came after the ARPA funds out of Congress. And those dollars are for infrastructure. They're all infrastructure projects. And economic development and projects that bring communities together are priority projects. It's a big discussion to have, but if I don't submit the letter of interest, then there's no chance of even getting invited. So if you don't object, I'm going to go ahead and submit that on Friday. If I get invited to apply, then we could have a bigger discussion about if we want to go down that road. Steve and Matt are out frantically pulling together some estimated costs on what something like this would run for the town, based on the concepts that we have been talking about, which I can do a formal presentation on if we even get invited to apply. But again, we just felt like it was could be a one-time opportunity. And we heard a lot from community members about wanting a community center.
So this would be in the area of the Pinnacle where the pool house is now?
This would be
not at-
replacing the-
Not at Brookside? not-
No,
not the
no,
old
no, no, no,
building.
no.
That's a whole different thing.
No, that's a whole different thing. This is a community center, would replace the pool house. In the next few years, we're going to have to put some significant money into the pool house. So this would replace the pool house, and it does an add-on, which is basically the size of a half basketball court. So you could have your indoor sports, you could have your indoor pickleball, your indoor, all the winter adult sports that you want. You would need to have a full kitchen and a generator backup to be a warming shelter. But that could all be used for other purposes as well in town. It could make that year round. So when people are sliding, there's bathrooms available, there's warming center, so it could be a pretty cool project. But again, I mean, we're not really designed for it, but I feel like,
Well, it'd be an interesting way to pool all those monies together, if you can get all those different agencies to help pay for something that we wouldn't have any costs associated with, other than maintenance after it was up. And at least to put it out there. And, maybe we get it, maybe we don't, but
yeah,
it's worth a shot.
okay. And if we do get invited to apply, I'll come back to the board and make sure that it is in fact something that you want to do. But,
I think we should apply.
okay. That's it for me, for old business.
In that presentation, you just said there was some mention about indoor pickleball courts and things, recreational things inside.
Yep.
I know we had a discussion that we were going to approach the schools too, to talk to them about recreation and stuff, and about having a little more access to the facilities there. Have we had a conversation yet with them, or is that in the future coming up soon, after the rec committee gets going? or-
So I think after Matt talked with the group today that was talking about, he reached out to them. And the answer was not a hard, fast no. It was, let's talk
He reached
about
out to the
Sundays.
schools?
He reached out to the schools.
Excellent.
Yep. So hopefully we can work something out. They have been opposed to that in the past. But, we're talking about Sunday afternoons. My understanding is 2 hours on Sunday afternoons, from November to, I think, November to April.
mostly during the winter time,
Yeah,
it
during the
seemed.
winter months, to be able to have some indoor adult, yes. He did reach out to them today, because he came back and reported to me what he
It
had.
was quick.
Yeah.
The meeting was at 10.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Does anybody else have any old business? Does anybody else have any old business?
Well, okay, then maybe we need to move up front.
What you said about the Julian quarries, and I did have a question.
The Julian Quarries.
Kick down the road?
So the update for the Julian Quarries is simply that Preston, who is our zoning administrator, is working with Julian on the violations that we can deal with easily, basically that low-hanging fruit that we can deal with right now. We are waiting. The board will be receiving a full legal opinion from Jim that will outline, our attorney, Jim Carroll, that will be outlining the legal process. I mean, at this point, now that we're in a violation territory, the process becomes very legal. We've had people that have asked, why are you not making them stop? It doesn't work that way. So it's a very legal process to cite a notice of violation, and then there's appeals to the notice of violation. There's a very strict process that goes with that. Thank you. But those processes have started. Preston is talking with them, is working with them on their violations, and like I said, it's the board is awaiting a legal opinion that talks about the process that we'll be following and are required to follow. So it's not ignored, but this is not an immediate response type of issue. Again, it's very streamlined, or it's very, not streamlined, it's very statutorily driven, how we deal with these types of issues. So, yeah, but it is, we are doing stuff. You have to go to the mic. Yes.
Yes, I have.
Give us your name too, sir.
In a Bill Gorski. I live on Deanbrook Road. I'm adjacent to All Stones Quarry. Does that mean that the white water is still going to come down the brook? It's up to 4 times a week now.
I understand. The town cannot enforce pollution to waterways. That is enforcement from the
But
state.
you can, because not the water. I own the land under the water. And they're polluting my land with the white dust and oil that they're cutting with.
I understand. We do not have legal authority to go to a business and say, you have to cease and desist right now. That is not a statutory authority that the town of Chester
Okay, I'm
has.
just wondering, because this has been going on for 3 years now.
I understand. And that really is along the lines of the Act 250 violations.
Okay.
There's nothing I can do about Act
Right.
250.
It seems like when the process starts, when it gets to the point of the legal process, it's going to be drawn out. I don't want to disappoint people and think that it's all going to be fixed in a month or two. I could see this dragging on for a while, and maybe being optimistic, a year or so, but I don't know how the process exactly works, but it's in the legal system now, which means lawyers and courts. And by the time
Appeals.
they finally come through with a decision and then they act on it, that's when finally something might happen. But that could be a ways down the line. I mean,
To be
we as a
clear,
town.
none of that means we're not taking action.
No, there's
It's
things
going to
going
take a
on.
long time. It's
Yep.
going to be a pain.
Yep.
But we have started the process, I believe is what you've said. We have initiated the process with our legal counsel, right?
Yeah, I've said that a few times, yep.
At least as far as what we as a town can do.
Yes.
I want to put on my previous environmental consultant hat and speak to what Arnie was talking about. Anytime that a situation like this gets into the legal process, it can take years. And I don't mean to say that to discourage people, but you have all the legal findings, and then you got to do sampling, and it has to be tested, and then those get questioned, and then it has to be done again. And so it's an issue that may take a while. Like we've said, we're doing what we can, but then there's the state that has to do their part relative to the Act 250 and the Environmental Conservation Department. Yeah, so you just need this case, sorry, Heather, you need to just keep talking to your state representative and the senators and say, what's going on? I'd like some information. Everybody's.
Well, and
everybody's overworked.
that's a great idea, Lee.
Yeah, the point is that the squeaky wheel does get the grease. I don't suggest being rude, but keep writing letters, keep sending emails, keep making phone calls, because eventually you will be heard and you will get some answers.
Okay.
Heather.
So if I could interject a little bit here, I have talked to Act 250 and I have talked to the Natural Resource Board, and I've talked to Julie, and the Act 250, the town is going to have, and Julie, maybe you need to step in here. Nothing can go fast, but the neighbors or the group of citizens that are opposed to this can't just rely on the town, because the town has a separate interest and the neighbors have a separate interest. So all parties need to keep in communication, but we all have to work to let the Act 250 know that we're still concerned, send things to Act 250, and keep on that too.
And a lot of this is going to come out in Jim Carroll's legal document that will be coming.
Interject something? Sure. I found out that Act 250 only handles anything over 10 acres in Vermont. And neither quarry together equals 10 acres, and that's why the state is at a stall. I am one of the neighbors from them, I never get any communications from anybody, what the legal thing is, what's going on. And I think that the people that are involved in this should get a little bit more information from the town on where we are, what's going on, how far we've gone, what roadblocks we've come across. I mean, right now, I got a fight with them over my lawn because they're encroaching on my property. You know, they just do what they want, the same thing they did in Connecticut, and they're getting away with it.
Well,
Well, and have you been in touch with Act 250, sir?
Yes.
All right.
They said it has to be 10 acres or more.
No, so
That's 10.
there is a permit on that property. So what you're asking them to do is to enforce the violations of their permit. That doesn't have anything to do with 10 acres. So they need to enforce the violations on their own pending, or their own permits, which they issued a jurisdictional opinion. So now what Act 250 needs to do is get the jurisdictional opinion upheld and then enforced. That's their next steps, which for them is a legal process. It's going to involve lawyers.
So as things move along and we get notifications and information of the material that would be allowed to share, we will share with you. There'll probably be some things that we won't be able to because of confidentiality or whatever, some legal aspects to it. But if we're allowed to share it, we will share it to make sure that you folks are informed about what's going on, whether it's positive, whether it's a roadblock, or whatever it is. I mean, we're not trying to do something in a vacuum and not let people know what's going on, and we want to make sure this thing gets taken care of also, but it doesn't seem like it works that fast with government, that's for sure.
Hi, I'm Lori Quinn, and we're right on Route 10 in Gassets. And I really feel for our neighbors with this, and that they've had all the work that they have done, and I really appreciate that the Select Board is really hearing this out. And I agree with the comment about communication. I know we don't really have an organization in Gassets. I have gotten to know many of my neighbors through Facebook, and I think everybody in our area would like to be informed. So if there's a way to identify, or if I can help you with that, that would be great. I do hear a lot of traffic at my house being so close to the road, and I have noticed in the last couple weeks, the trucks that are trucking the quarry rock, in the giant pickup trucks, dump trucks going from Route 103 to the other quarry. And I know every time they go by, because they are speeding very fast, they're completely full, and they hit the Jake brake right in front of our house, and they rumble all the way down the road until they take the turn at Deanbrook. Yeah, and I mean, I can hear them coming down the road, right around where the old Town Farm Inn is. I can hear them accelerating. It's truly, I can tell you every hour they go by, it's absolutely a speeding, hazardous, giant truck coming by, and a complete noisy thing through the whole Route 10. So, I mean, that is, I'm hoping that maybe you could speak to the police about monitoring that a little bit. That, to me, is maybe something that small thing we can do to make our lives a little quieter. Thank you.
I can certainly talk to them.
I think we can definitely notify the police department of the complaint that you're talking about, and possibly have some extra patrols in that area or whatever to try to alleviate the problem. But if they're legal and they aren't going speeding, there's no way to really stop them, but definitely make sure they are following the law in that area regarding loads or speeds or whatever it might take.
Good evening. Rainey Melanson. The town used to enforce weight limits during mud season. Have we stopped doing that? Do we allow the damage to the town roads? And that's a town issue. When did we stop enforcing that?
We do enforce them. If we know about an issue, we do enforce them.
So if we see the trucks on the road, take a video, give it to the police,
You can, yes.
anything will happen?
Is the road posted?
Yes,
sir?
our roads are posted, and yes, we do enforce
Okay.
overweight.
And a lot of that is dependent on the condition. They're posted for a period of
Correct.
time, but once the road's firm up, they're a little more lax when it comes to the enforcement, I believe.
One more?
One more.
All right, so I actually spent some time with the Julians the other night, and it seemed to me that they were very interested in doing more to make their neighbors happy and be a part of the community. So I know there's a lot of people here that have strong feelings about what they're doing and the racket and so forth and so on. I'm busy, but I would be willing in some way to communicate a little bit with them. My suggestion, so this is my concern, kind of having a little bit of a different insight on this. The difficulty in having a town deal with a legal issue with this, and I apologize if I'm overstepping my boundaries, is we got a certain amount of people that live in that area, and we work with a tax base, so we start spending a lot of money on lawyers to help a smaller group than the people that don't live around there. Like, why are we spending all this money? And that becomes a difficulty for our select board members. So it seems like what's kind of coming out here is that there might be a need for a group to work together cohesively around that, then have communication with the Julians in the town and Act 250 and everybody, but to expect our select board in our town to spend tons and tons of money on lawyers to fight people that have tons and tons of money is going to be difficult. So I'm willing to be helpful and communicate with them, and I think that having Preston, as I know from being on the planning board, he's a very nice man, great communication skills, and I'm sure that he's listening to the community, and he'll do a good job of communicating with the Julians. And I got a feeling that we're going to be in a better position.
All right, thank you, Bear. We really
Yep,
should.
I understand.
Yep. That was under old business, right?
Yes. Item 4.
My bad. The next item on our agenda is to appoint.
Microphone, Ernie.
The next item on our agenda is to appoint our town clerk treasurer. At our last town meeting on the Australian ballot, the town voted to have our town clerk treasurer be appointed rather than elected. So now we're at the position that we have to appoint our town clerk and treasurer. Deb Aldrich is here. She's been our town clerk and treasurer for many years.
She just celebrated 40 years working for the town. And she's loved every second of it.
Well, then she's a lucky person.
That's right.
To love your job for that much, for 40 years, that's pretty good. So I would entertain a motion to appoint Deb Aldrich for a 3-year term as our town clerk treasurer.
Yeah, you're moving, I'll second.
Lee's the motion, and Peter's the second. Any discussion on this? Would anybody like to make any comments?
No, thank her for years. I mean, if you think about it, she constantly reminds me of my father, so.
Well, I don't know how that works, but
A lot of years of
it's a
service.
small town.
Okay.
Nice, nice. Deb, thanks for all the work you do. It's always a pleasure to walk in there and see your smiling face, and you're damn good at your job also. All those in favor of appointing Deb Aldrich for a 3-year term as our town clerk treasurer, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you, Deb. Next item on our agenda is paper of record. Over the last, I forget, 3-4 years, we've been using the same 2 papers. One, the Vermont Journal, which is basically an old school newspaper, on print, and they do have a website also. But then we also have the Chester Telegraph, which is a totally online newspaper. And it seems like it's been working out really well to have the two of them in combination. I think we're serving the purpose of what these papers of records are meant to do, which is get the word out to our community. And I think we do that rather well when we support both these organizations because of the different clientele that people are used to using. I know a lot of people still love to have a newspaper in their hand, and there's younger people that don't even probably know what a newspaper is. And they get their information and all their news from that little orb they hold in their hand that's been running their lives forever, and hopefully for the good. But it's what's happening. I don't think the state has really changed it. I know they've been pressed a few times to have it so that you could decide whether the paper of record was either electronic or paper or either or. But in our case, it just seems that it's working out really well the way it is. There's been some controversy in the past, but that's all behind us, and it's working out really well the way it is. We do have the Chester Telegraph here, and I think the Vermont Journal, Shantae, the publisher, could not make it. Sounds like she's a new mother,
Yes.
and she has a baby at home and stuff. But she did include a letter asking to be considered again, with some information on it that's in our package. And the Chester Telegraph also has included a letter with a lot of interesting information because it's broken down by clicks and people that are actually viewing it and how that all works and stuff. So it really has a lot of valuable information about who they're connecting with, who they're contacting with, and who's reaching out. And when you look through all the information that's there, it's interesting because some people are up at 3 o'clock in the morning going to the Telegraph, and I'm going, wow, that's must be working a different shift or something. But it's been working out well. If you would like to speak a little bit towards this, or you're just happy that we're just going to roll along and approve it, is fine too. So I would entertain a motion that we have the Vermont Journal and the Chester Telegraph be our papers of records for the upcoming year.
So moved.
So Ariana's the motion, and Heather, you were in there too. I'll give you the second.
All righty.
And any discussion on this? Any comments?
So actually, I have a question for you two. I don't know if it's just my phone. We had a discussion a while ago about ad blockers, and my phone is now telling me I can't read the article because I have an ad blocker, but my computer doesn't. So I'm not sure if there's some difference between the mobile app and the... Okay, all right.
And that goes for everybody. They have, problems, give us a call.
You're going to have to speak to the microphone and give that information out.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Prairie. I'm the editor of the Telegraph. If anybody has a problem with an ad blocker and they need it removed, please give us a call. We'll work it out so that you can see all the ads, and you don't have to worry about, I guess everybody worries about viruses and things like this, but you don't really have to worry about that. We'll work it out.
Thank you.
Any other comments or discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? It's a lot smoother than other years. Yeah. Well, it's worked out really well. It really has. Next item is, it says executive session for the Planning Commission and the Development Review Board appointments. But lately, we've been having the interviews and the discussions and open session, and then doing the deliberation in executive session. And it's up to the board on how we want to do this. The consensus of the board is to have these discussions and these interviews with the people in open session, or do you want to do it in executive session on a one-on-one basis?
I would prefer executive session
For the interviews also?
for the interviews, yes.
Okay.
I'm fine with them in open meeting.
Lee?
I could go either way. I think that doing an executive session gives us a little bit more, I don't know if freedom's the right word, but a little less concern about questions that might be asked or whatever. I could go either way.
And Heather, what was your inclination?
Oh, I'm fine with it. We've been doing it in open session recently, and I'm fine with that.
All right, and I'm going for open session also, if that's all right. So I guess we'll just do it the way we did it for the last appointments and so.
Ariana.
We still deliberate in executive session, correct, sir?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, yep. So we have 3 appointments to the Planning Commission. Tim Roper, Barry Pinsky, and John Cummings, and Bill Gorski. There are 2 3-year terms, and one that would go till 2026, and one unexpired term that goes to 2025. Tim Roper and Barry Pinsky are seeking reappointment, and John Cummings and Bill Gorski are newcomers to the process. And we'll get to the DRB after we finish up the Planning Commission. I didn't forget you, Bob. You'll be in there, but that one should be the easier of the appointments for sure. So basically, Mr. Roper, you're out there. You're first on the list here, and you've been on the board, I'm not sure how many years and stuff, but the questions we usually start out with is, why would you like to continue on the board, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Apologies for not being there in person. I think I might have the same thing Heather has. Feel free, Heather. I think the work of the Planning Commission is very important to the town. We look ahead to the future of the town and try to make decisions about what we think is going to be best for the long-term health of the town. I think I've been, in answer to your question, I think I've been there 5 years now, Arnie. And I have to say that in those 5 years, this past year has been, I feel, the most productive of the Planning Commission in all that time. And I attribute that in large part to Preston's involvement and to Hugh Quinn being the chair. And also to, the experience that I have gained over that time. So, well, it is a commitment and it's work. And at times I think maybe I'd rather not do it. I think it's important. And in the end, I really do want to do it to continue because especially we're in the middle of some important things right now as far as the looking at the Unified Development Bylaws and getting involved in the housing piece of that's so important to us here in Chester and across Vermont right now. So I think I bring something, I think I bring some beneficial points of view to the Planning Commission. I like the fact that we're a diverse body. I think that's important as well. And I'd be honored to be able to continue if you see fit to reappoint me.
Thank you, Tim. Any questions from board members?
Yes. Tim, by your record and by meeting minutes, you're in favor of a 45-foot, raising the limit of housing in Chester to 45 feet to the middle of the roof, when the limit is 35 feet. And even in a meeting where the Chester Fire Department said they couldn't service anything over 35 feet, you still voted in favor of having a higher limit. Can you kind of tell us why you were not, why that's your opinion?
That was a pretty long time ago. I think I was in the minority and we moved on from that, so I don't really see any need to rehash it. It's a done deal.
Okay, no, I have no problem.
Anybody else have any other questions?
Yeah, Tim, this is Lee Gustafson. You mentioned a minute ago, and I didn't quite catch what you said, but you said that the planning commission is in the middle of some important issues, and you listed two of them, and I didn't quite catch them. Could you repeat those?
Reworking the Unified Development Bylaws district by district and identifying actually what those districts are. So that's work that's in progress. And then the other piece of it is, it all folds together, Lee, but the housing aspect works into all of the work that we're doing, and I see that as something that's very important.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions from the board for Mr. Roper?
Actually, I have a couple more. I know, Tim, that we've had this discussion a couple of times as you've been on the board for 5 years or so, and I just want to ask you, what's your vision for Chester over the next 10 to 20 years? Where do you see us in 10 years and then 20 years?
Wow, that's a tough one. I don't have a crystal ball, but what I'd like to see is for us to try to align with the results of the townwide survey that was conducted last fall. And I think some of the overarching points that came out of that seem consistent are that the residents of Chester would like to keep the small town atmosphere that we have and also keep our rural flavor. So those are two things that I think really define our town. So that would be a key for me, Lee. I really want to lean on the results of that survey. I kind of spearheaded the conducting of that survey because I feel like very often at least I feel like we're working in a vacuum. Bill Lindsay mentioned this earlier, that typically there are maybe one or two citizens that come to planning commission meetings. I get it, it's not very exciting work, but it also makes it harder for us as commissioners to really keep our finger on the pulse of what's important to the town. So that was the point of taking that survey. And I would like to make sure that we use that as a guide as we go forward.
So follow up, I appreciate your answer. What do you see as the Planning Commission's role in reaching those two goals that you just stated about the rural character and the, I can't remember what the other one was.
The small town atmosphere?
Yes, thank you.
Well, that is directly affected by zoning. A lot of the things that people would like us to do, I think, are not necessarily within the realm of what we can guide. I don't want to say power because we really don't have any power. We can only recommend. So the work that we're doing right now is crucial to that. If we're looking at redefining the zoning districts and what is appropriate within those districts, what the setbacks look like, what the density is, how do we mix keeping a small town atmosphere with a rural outlying area with adding housing? That's the big challenge.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Arnie.
Heather?
Yeah, hi. I don't have a question, but I'd just like to say thank you for the 5 years of working on the board, and it's appreciated. Thank you.
And Lee,
Thank you for that, Heather.
You had another question?
Yeah, I got another question, Tim. Sorry to keep asking questions, but have you spoken to many business owners or leaders in town relative to how the bylaws will affect or will allow them to expand their businesses?
I can't say I've spoken to a lot of them. I mean, I certainly know quite a few business owners. And I guess, that question raises another balancing point. How do you balance between having the successful business environment that we need here with maintaining a small town atmosphere? So, one of the things I've recently been advocating for is more mixed use, which would allow more business to fit in along our main streets. That's something that's in discussion right now.
Okay, thank you.
But I am also a business owner, so, anybody's welcome to approach me, and I'd be happy to talk with them about their concerns.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Anybody else? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next candidate. Thank you, Mr. Roper. Barry Pinsky, you're up. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you'd like to continue on the Planning Commission.
I believe I may be the longest tenured member on the commission now, which is kind of odd. I think I started in 2017. I got involved initially because there wasn't many other people stepping up to get involved, and I'm single with no kids and have time, even though I'm busy with my work. I found it to be quite rewarding, actually, to be involved in town government. I think it's helped me, mature as a person, develop better communication skills, and have some pride in my community, which is kind of cool. I like being a part of the community. I think I bring a unique aspect in a couple ways. One, being a creative thinker, I bring ideas, which are often, nothing more than ideas, but we need them. And then having a business in town, I have a practical side to me and a reality-based side to me and what's going on. I don't know. I was on the Downtown Master Plan Committee too, and that was interesting, and we really haven't brought much of that forward. I'd like to see us be, we're trying.
We've done a ton.
Well, I'm an idea person. I'd like to see much more forward, but we do have a pocket park. Okay, we have a pocket park. Sorry, Julie. But I guess from my perspective, I really think that as a planning board, the stuff that we're doing with zoning and so forth and so on is very important. But in a lot of ways, not much happens in Chester. And I would like to see us in a little bit more of a planning perspective where we take on some of the work that the economic development people took on, the stuff that Julie was talking about earlier with working in the housing committee, and really getting in, and what Lee's question was, where do you see us in the future, really getting into the concept of planning. So I think a lot of what seems to me that we do is a little bit more of the tail of the dog, and I think in real planning, if you have the opportunity, you want to be the nose of the dog, and that's really hard to do. So, but I really, I think we have a great team. I think that we're on a really good path. He's doing a great job as a chair. Preston is invaluable, and working with Jason is invaluable, and we're communicating well and really getting quite a bit done. So it's nice. It's a good thing. So I'm hoping that and what's interesting to me, because I'm a little slow, is how much I've been able to retain from my years of being on the board and being actually able to add things that other people on the board weren't really aware of, and then feel like I'm really contributing with my experience, which is something that's hard to get. And when you have more, or people less experience, it takes time to learn. So that's a good thing.
Questions from board members?
Yes. So I'm probably going to ask everybody these same questions. You kind of answered the 10 to 20 years question that I have, but do you agree with what Tim said as far as the survey that was taken and looking to keep the small town atmosphere and the rural character of Chester? And how would you maintain or retain that feel to Chester in 10 or 20 years?
So, a lot of, I mean, oh boy. So this is the problem. When you ask me a question, I get into stories, and I'll just try to be as succinct as possible. Look at Arnie's face. I grew up in a town of 350 people. We had a grocery store, a hardware store, lots of stuff going on in our little town. It's all gone, all gone. And transportation, box stores, whatever, changed it. I moved to another town, Chaska, which is close to the city. They had industrial parks. My friends that invented the Nordic Track built there. They had my friends' tax money built a community center. They planned ahead. I mean, in Minnesota, they'll put a bridge out in a cornfield before the road goes through. So we live in an interesting place where we're tourist-oriented. We have a mountain and where people come to ski and so forth and so on, and we have this relationship with that. But as a community and community business and actual residents living here, we lack a lot. So I'm a little concerned that we could end up without a hardware store if no one buys it. We already don't have a family restaurant. So unless we figure out a way to plan ahead, get people to move here and have some stability with the people that are living here, we could have a vacuum like happened in my small town. That's a fear. So, are we is a handful of people from Chester that would be on this committee smart enough to figure out what we have to do to potentially save our town or come up with good ideas to make us vital? I don't know. But that's part of our job, and in a way, I wish we had more of that responsibility and a budget and an ability to look forward and do those sorts of things. Because if we just get caught up in the mud here and wonder what we can do here or there when nobody does anything anyway, things could disappear on us before we even know it. So it's, it's a big question, Lee, and I don't, I think we're trying, but I don't know if it's really in our wheelhouse. I wish we had more ability to think like that, to really try to come up with a longer-term plan, because we have some serious issues facing us in terms of if anybody's really going to live here enough to have vital businesses in town that we need, like, I don't know, it's just like I would just like to be able to go to a place and see families eating spaghetti. I don't know why that matters to me so much, but, I don't have kids, and I'm not involved in school, and I just kind of feel like alone in town. And when you see families out eating spaghetti, it makes you feel more of a part of a community. And like one of the ideas that I had is I actually called Johnson & Wales. Could we partner up with Johnson & Wales some way and have a restaurant in town that would be part of their school? And they said, well, if you get a restaurant going, we can bring interns up here and have you help run it. Grafton has the Grafton Inn, which works under their envelope of their trust or whatever they have. And somewhere along the line, we have to figure out some of this stuff because of what we lack. So I hope I'm answering your question in a way, but that's the way I think. And at the same time, we're solving things like the zoning issues and answering those questions, and I'm thinking like I do them within, and we're making those decisions. That's what we're tasked for now. So we're getting those things done.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So do you think all the work that's going on now and that you're addressing on the Planning Commission is helping for these serious issues that you're talking about? I mean, those are related.
Well, yeah, and like I said, I mean, a lot of what we end up doing, Arnie, in my opinion, is more the tail of the dog. So we have a housing problem. So now we're trying to scramble to figure out how do we solve this housing problem. A number of years ago, no houses were selling. So then you try to do something to figure out how to make it sell. By the time you figure out how to make houses sell, things change. So that's the hard part. How do we deal with the things that we're supposed to deal with and still look ahead? To answer your question, yes, I do, and I do think that the zoning that we're doing and the reasons that we're doing it will help these things. I think in my opinion, the biggest thing that we have going for us in this town and potentially the state is that we are a place where people can have a home occupation, and not everywhere allows that. So someone can open a shop and hang a shingle and do business. And unfortunately, we have more people buying a house, not living there, coming up on the weekends, and not participating in buying things in the hardware store or eating in our restaurants during the week. And we don't have a lot of like little shops. Like I really think we could be like 6A on Cape Cod. We got so many people coming through this town with so much money, and a lot of the houses along 103 don't have anybody in them. Nobody lives there. So this is part of our problem. So maybe with the housing density in more places, and if we got into some marketing and advertising, maybe we could solve some of these things. And some of this is just the way it is. It's beyond our control. We got to kind of live with it.
Thank you, Barry. Any other questions from board members? Anything else, Lee?
I don't know.
No.
Well, I appreciate it. It's sometimes I get a little bit in the weeds with my thoughts and ideas, but I think that we are doing the core issues too and solving these problems and moving forward. And it's really, Hugh's doing. I just want to throw Hugh some gratitude. He's doing a great job as a chair. I think his corporate training has helped. He's a very nice man. So, and I think all of the board members, and Peter is a good asset for our board too. He's got his engineering mind, and he gets in the weeds with things, and everybody is doing really well. So I hope that we can keep our core members, and I think whoever comes on next, it's very important that they have a good ability to work with others, and that's like my only concern. Sometimes if people are too self-driven and with their own ideas and don't care primarily about the future of the town, we can get stuck on that stuff too, and it's harder to move forward. So, thank you.
Thank you, Barry.
Thank you, Barry.
Next candidate seeking appointment onto the Planning Commission, John Cummings. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you would like to be on the board.
Great. Good evening, everyone. Appreciate the time. I'll be to the point. My interest in it really is probably a broader picture. I was born in Vermont, in Brattleboro. I went to the University of Vermont, studied finance, graduated. I looked really hard to get a job and stay in Vermont. It was challenging for me. At the last minute, I ended up getting a job with Geldwin and Ludlow. And then kind of the caveat with that is I had to sign up to move to North Carolina. So I was able to get a job in Vermont, but I also moved to North Carolina. So from there, I stayed 3 years. They moved me to Seattle, and then I got moved to Pennsylvania. And then I came back around. Geldwin had me open the plant. Unfortunately, it just here recently closed over in North Springfield. So I came to Vermont, back in Vermont in '06. It was that time I had some three younger kids, and I decided I wanted to stop moving. I could have made a lot more money moving anywhere else around the country, and I wanted to raise my family here. So I stayed. I raised my family. My kids now I have 3 of them that are, one's graduated college, UVM. I got another one in Binghamton, I got another one in WPI, and I got a 12-year-old. So, point being on that is 3 of them are pretty much out of the house. I've got a lot more time on my hands from that standpoint. And then the other part is, the last 25 years, while raising the family, I held bigger positions, or not bigger positions, bigger companies, such as Geldwin and Drew's here in town, that at the time was 25 employees when I started in 09, and when I left in 2021, we were just under 200, so that was a lot of growth. I think I ended up working with a lot of you folks over the years for certain things while we were growing. But the other part of that is, as I left Drew's in 21, I went down to Applied Bolting. Applied Bolting is a great company. It's a family company. It's a local company. Great people. It's 25 employees. So not 200 employees. So again, not a lot of kids at home. Not a lot of employees at work. I've got some time on my hands. I've always had an interest in being more of a contributor to the place that I live in, and never really was able to take the time. Being at those other locations, I was getting called throughout the night. I was often having dinner and going back to work. Those days are kind of gone. I'm not doing that currently, so I'm able to focus on other things. And honestly, my wife and I have talked about moving from the area now that the kids are all getting older, and she informed me that we're not. So I'm staying here, and I'm a long-time resident of Vermont, probably for the rest of my life. So I would like to see, again, as a native of Vermont, I would like to see, to your question, I know you're going to ask me, is, my vision of it would be is, there's a couple things. I'd like to see, me personally, when I graduated, I was dying to stay in Vermont. A lot of my college roommates and buddies, everybody, they couldn't get out of Vermont fast enough, but I wanted to stay here, and it was hard for me to. So I would like to, maybe this isn't the right forum, but maybe it creates another forum to some other avenue where I can help in that scenario. The other thing is, as I was recruiting managers for Geldwin in 06 and 07, I'd bring folks in, and it was hard for me to keep a young college-educated manager in this area, to be honest with you. There just wasn't enough stuff going on. They wanted the Applebee's at the end of the road. They wanted the malls, whatever, on that part, but it was tough for me. I brought a lot of folks in, a lot of folks left. I'm not advocating that we do malls and Applebee's, trust me. I don't want any of that. Maybe I'm being a little biased, but I don't see any use for that or any real benefit for us. What I could see is some more opportunity to do some more niche. I think Brattleboro, I'm from Brattleboro. I go down there, they've really done a nice job kind of niching out a lot of things and taking advantage of a lot of things, growing a lot of little pockets down there, and there's nothing commercial. Walmart went in across the river, and everybody's like, oh, it's going to shut down the entire downtown. The downtown's more vibrant now than I think it's ever been. They've just found an angle, boutiques, things that people like, that are interesting, that you're not going to go to Walmart and find anyways. And I'm going to stop there. I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to do that. Maybe not a lot, but there's opportunities for us to do that here in town. And I'd like to, Vermont as a whole, and this town in particular, would be a place I would love my kids to come back and say, hey, I want to raise my family here like my dad raised us here. A lot of respect for the schools, a lot of respect for the sports programs, a lot of respect for everything that goes on in these meetings and hearings. So now I'm just stepping back and say, I've got time to do it. I want to make a contribution to our area, and I think this is one way. I've been, if anybody's looked at my resume, if it was passed around or whatever, I've got 25 years of planning, organizing, budgeting, disciplining, all kinds of running plants, running things with extremely chaotic and aggressive timelines. So it's kind of stuff I thrive in. So I think I could be maybe a different perspective, or just somebody who wants to stay in the area and look after the area and do good stuff. I most recently just signed up to be a firefighter with Matt Wilson.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you. Thank you. So Tuesday nights for a while, I'm going to be busy, and then looks like I'm going to get a call about every 1.3 days is the way it kind of works out. So
Keep you busy.
So, yeah.
Questions for Mr. Cummings?
So I have a question, of course. What do you see as the role of the Planning Commission? You've given us a lot of information, where you're coming from, et cetera, but what do you see as your position or your role as part of this group?
Thanks, Lee. Appreciate it. It's a really good question. One thing I will come right out and say straightforward is I'm not an expert at being involved in town government. I don't know a lot of the ins and outs. I don't know the roles. I don't necessarily know all the positions and the what you can reach to and what you can't reach to. I'll learn all that stuff. I think what I could bring to the table for the Planning Commission, what I believe it does is helps draw the lines between dots that are challenging for the area to connect and help to, as gentleman's point is, what can we do, where do we want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road, and how can we navigate that wisely now to make the right decisions, that we're not necessarily making a decision now that 20 years from now is going to put my kids in a tough spot on being able to raise their families here. I look back, I think you want to have growth, but it needs to be sustainable growth and systematic and wise growth. I think I'll bring a balance of that. And I also think my brother is he works at the federal government. So him and I have, he reminds me that by design, the government is designed to move a little slower than private enterprise for a reason. So I bring that up as there's a lot for me to learn. I don't know all the answers. I'm not 100% sure. I have a lot of experience in working with a lot of different kind of folks and bringing people together and getting things done. So I think that overall benefit with my experience could be a help for the town.
Thank you.
So,
Any other questions from board members? No. Thank you,
Very good.
Mr.
Thanks.
Cummings.
Thanks for your time and consideration. By all means,
Thank you, John.
And we have one last candidate, Mr. Gorski. Basically start out with the same questions. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you would like to be on the planning
Well, I
commission.
can go back a long ways, probably as long as you can, I think. I was born in Brattleboro. I was brought up in Springfield on Valley Street, which we called Pollock Avenue back then. And I have owned a general contractors company. I've had small engine repair company. I've dealt a lot with people. I was on the road commission for Charlestown for 3 years, and then we moved over here, so that was bad. And I know a lot. We did a lot of planning over there, especially for the new developers. We knew that the old developers were cutting corners as far as drainage and that. We got that straightened out with them. We go out on sites and make sure that it was being done right. And my thing is, I just soon leave Chester Township the way it is. I like mom and pop stores. I like the Fullerton Inn. They have great meals there. They have dinners there. The restaurants. If we put up these big restaurants, yeah, the out-of-staters will stop, but very little time have I gone past a restaurant in South Charlestown that it hasn't been full and overfull. There's been lines there waiting to get in and eat. Fullerton Inn is usually full. I'd like to see the town itself stay the way it is. If we're going to add, we should look into planning on the outskirts of town where it doesn't interfere with the inner structure of the town itself. I'd like to see I'd like to see a recreation area, which you were talking about, not only for children, but for seniors too. It's planning. I want to see the town grow. I want to see it grow the right way so we can look back and not have any disorder on what has happened and what we did. You know, I want to feel good about it. And that is my main point. I enjoy it. I know I have some trouble over there, but that doesn't have anything to do with this. But I like to see a town grow, but so many towns have grown so fast and so bad that some of them just lost their way. I don't want to see Chester do that. I want to see Chester really plan for what's ahead of us and have a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, a 20-year plan down the road of what's going to take place during those time, and turn over to you guys what it's going to cost to do that and where it's going to be done. I mean, I'm not sure what's going on with the Armory, if that's in Chester or not. I think it's pretty close to the line out there. It's a good place for something, you know. The out-of-staters are always looking for a place to stay. We are kind of the hub for the ski-toes around here, so we could probably put up some housing up there if we could get the land cheap enough, maybe for $1 or something. But that's what I'd like to see for the town.
Questions from board members?
You got one, I know you do.
I'm looking Lee's way.
I'm the question man. So I appreciate your giving us the information you did. So you were talking about growth in Chester, and you'd like to see it stay the same, but have some growth potential. And how do you see the planning commission and the development bylaws?
Well,
helping
I
in
think
that?
I think what the planning commission needs to do is go through the bylaws first, get those right, and make sure they're right.
So how would you do that? You got any specific ideas?
Well, from what I understand, there's the residential, there's in town, there's residential, there's on the outskirts where I am. Get those right down to where they belong, like in town. There's certain places for business, certain places for residents. It should be the same as we grow out through. So it's a mixture, you know, it's a diversity. It's not just businesses. It's a residential, you know, in commercial together, but nothing like Bryant's or J&L or anything like that, because, I mean, it would bring workers here, but it would take away from the town.
Right.
And as you can see, Springfield's tried that. It worked for many, many years, and it kind of sunk. But I think that once we get the zoning straightened out and handled, then we move on to planning within that, the new zoning regulations. And I think that's very important, that the zoning regulations get straightened out and revamped. I mean, I hate to say that we're moving forward. We are. Things change. And some of the old stuff that we have on the books really isn't that good anymore. It doesn't really relate to anything now. So I think it's important that we really sit back, take a look at the zoning. That should be the #1 thing on the agenda, is the zoning itself. To get that out of the way, and I think it would be a lot easier to plan what should happen after that.
So what's your view of the business community in Chester and the business environment? Is it?
I like the businesses here. I shop here. I mean, I do go get my groceries in New Hampshire because there's no state tax, but I also do visit the grocery store here in town, Smitty's. I do business with the Ace Hardware, and I do frequent the restaurants some. So,
Do you see anything that the town could do or the planning commission could do to bring more business in or to help the businesses here to thrive or expand or?
Well,
I know I'm asking you questions you may not have thought about, and that's fine.
well, it's a little hard because I grew up with a bakery on 2 corners of my house, and there used to be a bakery here. My son used to take me up there. We used to have sandwiches and that at the northern end, or up 11. But yeah. But it's I like to see the businesses grow as well as Chester. I think they need to keep their places going. And you know, we have a lot of vacant properties in Chester, and I think that something could be planned with them once the zoning's done. Maybe, like if the restaurant wants to increase their parking area or increase their building, you know, that would be something to look at when we go through the zoning. But as far as the businesses go, I think they're doing a great job. I think we could do better for them. What that is right now, I don't know. I'd have to go in and study it and look around and see what we can do for them. I think it's important that we keep our businesses happy. Otherwise, they're going to go someplace else. But I like the town the way it is. That's why I moved here in 2009. And, you know, that's about it. The businesses are great.
Yep.
And I mean all of them, even the small ones, are nice.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Well,
Okay.
I'd like to thank you, Mr. Gorski, for
Yeah,
coming
you're
forward and putting your name in for consideration. So before we go into executive session to deliberate on this, we could probably do the appointment or not the appointment, but at least have a conversation with Robert Greenfield. He's here to seek reappointment to a 3-year term on the Development Review Board, and you're the current chairman, I believe, too.
Yes.
So, same questions. Tell us a little bit about yourself, why you would like to continue on, and how's it been going on the Development Review Board?
Thinking about when I started, there was an opening on the Planning Commission. Peter sat here, Claudio sat here, and I sat here. And you were meeting in the town clerk's office. And you called each one of us down, interviewed us, and the select board offered the planning committee position to Claudio. I believe that lasted 2 weeks. Then you gave it to Peter, and I thank you very much for not picking me. But a couple weeks later, I got a call from David, and he said, would you consider being on the Development Review Board? And I said, what is it? And he explained it to me. And it took over a year to understand just the terminology that the Development Review Board uses in their decisions, in their questions, in the way they operate. And I sat here, not saying a whole lot, just taking it all in, and I liked it. It became fun, and it became interesting. And 2 years later, Carla said, I'm leaving. And I was very happy to be the vice chairperson of that committee. And the rest of the board members of the Development Review Board looked at me and said, well, they're not going to be a chairperson, so you're it. And I said, the only way I was going to take it is if I had the full support of those other board members, because it's new to me, I'm still learning the language, I'm going to make mistakes, please help me. And they all agreed to help me, and that's where I am today. And they're still helping me.
Questions?
Yeah, by the way, I applied to get on the Development Review Board, and I ended up on the Planning Board.
Lucky me. Not you, lucky me. So, but I'm having fun. I'm seeing things in Chester that I never would have seen, meeting people I never would have met, and enjoy it. And I feel like I'm giving back to my community.
How do you feel about the relationship between the Select Board and the DRB?
I don't have an issue with it. I think maybe I think the Select Board, the way the Development Review Board was explained to me, was the Development Review Board was sort of like the judicial branch, interpreting the laws that you guys make. And, you know, that's the way I approached it. And you guys make the ordinances and laws. It doesn't always fit. Sometimes we have to make adjustments, and we do. And that's the way I view the relationship.
Any other questions or comments? Well, Bob,
I don't have any.
No.
Well, you've been on the board long enough for the, yeah.
Well, as I said, it was 5 years ago, right about now, where Peter and I and Claudio sat up here, and that's when it happened. And I keep showing up.
I appreciate your work on the board. Thank you.
Excuse me?
I appreciate the work you're doing on the board.
Thank you.
It's a big part of our community, having citizen volunteers, because sometimes it's a thankless job. But
Hey,
I think you're well appreciated by this board, and I think by a lot of the
It's
townspeople.
nowhere near as thankless as yours, but I enjoy it. I enjoy the interaction. I get something from every board member. We're 5 guys, and we always don't agree, but that's okay. Everybody's got an opinion. You got to listen to them, and we find a consensus somewhere.
Well, thank you very much, Bob. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll go to executive session. We want to wait till the end.
Well, I think you have people here that are waiting to
All right,
know
yeah,
if they're,
all right.
which is why I put it in the middle.
So we're going to enter into executive session for deliberation, and when we come out, hopefully we'll take some action on these appointments. So
Heather, I'll have them call you downstairs from my office.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you guys set up.
Julie, do you want me to leave this?
Yeah, go ahead and leave on, just mute yourself.
All right.
old building over there. They're gonna, that old building, they're gonna basically give me, huh? Yeah, they're gonna give me that, or they're gonna give us a plot of land and X amount of, I think it was 10 years tax rate.
Right now, we have a number of businesses, buildings in Chester that are, quite frankly,
long as it doesn't overheat the charger.
Well, that would be the draw, you know, how much is dry. Yeah.
VTEL is pretty clear about what you could do and how it could get done, but they weren't going to do it for us.
No, they wash their hands with it. Just like my internet drops. It's windy. Just let it get windy and.
Everything goes out.
Yeah. Shut it down.
Yeah,
I don't think Michelle gives a damn, so. Michelle, he's the owner.
I hear more stories about That's just bad.
Yeah, but that's the kind of guy he is. Not on the property, I don't want it. You gotta move up now.
Big enough bottles. I don't know. Well, I've had an interface with his crews before and all that.
I've never had a problem with the people he works with. Never had a single problem with
switch is I mean a telephone switch, which is the computer bank that says, all right, you called this number, so I need to route here, 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 to get that phone number in there. That's the switch. And there's multiple of them across the country, and they all talk to each other. And, oh, well, you can't keep using that signal from here to here, so we're going to switch it to this. And
Interesting and very critical part of the shutting off our communications is bad, shutting off our electricity.
yeah, I think we're fiber optic because, well, and see, that's part of the problem. Going fiber optic moves the telephone away from, in my mind, and puts it in the internet, which so far the federal government has because now it's voice over IP. So it's a lot of internet switching, and the government hasn't decided what else in the city as electricity and telephone. You know, as a public utility, it has to be regulated a certain way. So,
They certainly spend a lot of time
well, it's a victory. The town clerk wants, what, all that fun. Yeah, but that's like what, what was it, that you heard about, what is it, 103-year-old companies were trying to say, well, you want to pull stuff through your internet account that isn't from our company, we get to throttle it. So if you want it not throttled, you have to pay us extra to get it not throttled. Yeah, where we all need the infrastructure, it doesn't matter, just like the power lines, everybody needs their infrastructure. But, you know, just because the company owns the power lines, sure, they can charge the other company to use them, but they can't then charge the user. And that's part of what was happening, there was a double charge. They were charging the company who wanted to use their stuff and charging the end user to not have their content throttled. Yeah. A lot of unsavory business practices. It's what I expect from this country these days.
system only has capitalist response.
And that's why we should have a laissez-faire system. It's why some regulations need it.
It's an animal that eats itself like a snake in the tail. Dog eat dog, the biggest dog always wins. Yeah, they have their effect.
You have to tilt windmills every once in a while, or else you're really having fun. You gotta go up in the air and go for a fly.
Yeah. A lot of the trades, I'm a tradesman, and a lot of us will take the signs off. We're not wearing company shirts or anything to identify ourselves.
Why not?
Roll them out.
the kids go there, hang out, and not spend any money?
Yeah, that's the big no, I got it.
Right, so kids aren't gonna go there. A lot of kids aren't gonna go to a place and hang out where they have to spend money, because they ain't got it.
They go to the rec area and they hang out there and they get all. Yeah, that's right.
And they do all the shit we did when we grew up. But it doesn't help anybody. I mean, there's not, in my opinion, 16, 17, 18, 21 not a bad thing, but when it becomes an every weekend thing, just to pass the time, that's when it starts becoming an issue.
Oh, yeah.
And I know plenty of people I grew up with who got stuck in that way.
I'm thinking out of it, you know. Well, on a good note, they are trying to build a better rec area for more activities.
Yeah, yeah.
Kids can go there, they don't have to really spend time.
Yeah, it's just a matter of time. Unfortunately, everything takes time.
Have all kinds of iffy plans with this, yes.
Yeah, but without the money backing up, it's hard to do it.
It is, but Julie's a very experienced screenwriter. If anybody can sniff out solid punch.
Yeah, Julie does a good job.
It'll be something for the kids, because, yeah, the board is not working.
Yes, all I did when I grew up was that I didn't go anywhere, I didn't do anything, because I didn't bother with my folks, so I just stayed at home. Yeah, that was the entirety of my high school.
So you don't just.
Yeah, the board was on one. I read a lot of good books, but, I wasn't being social at all. I wasn't going out and having fun. I was passing around until I could get the hell out of here. Well, that's because I left and I found out how much I didn't like the rest of the world. Yeah. Well, that's the problem. I didn't know until I left.
Where did you get stationed?
Well, I went to basic in San Antonio Air Force. So that was July, August time frame. So I got to hit Texas in high heat. Did not enjoy that. It was not a fun time. From there, I got shipped to Biloxi, Mississippi before the game of the Lynch Round. As a matter of fact, one weekend we were confined to base because an airman and his wife were out walking the beach late at night, and a few locals decided to use them into the room. Killed the wife. Walking on the beach. We think there were more than that did not disseminate to my Well, they got them Zippo hand warmers. Yeah, well, just because of the weather last week, I had somebody go, oh, it's freaking cold. I'm like, no, it's not. This is real spring temperatures. Unlike last week, where it decided it was August for 2 days.
You know, your body gets used to it so quickly, though.
Just don't want to rush through the high 60s, low 70s portion of the year, because that's the portion of the year that's actually comfortable.
Up here. It's cold up here.
Recording in progress.
So we're back in open session. And we had a very productive conversation regarding our appointments. The toughest one, and I lost my sheet. The toughest one we had was Bob Greenfield. At this point, I would entertain a motion to appoint Bob Greenfield to another 3-year term on the Development Review Board.
So moved.
Second.
Lee Gustafson's the motion, and Peter Hutkins is second. Any discussion on this? I would just like to add, Bob, that appreciate all the work that you've done for the town and the job you've done. Wow.
Should mute it.
Like in a state.
There you go.
That disappear?
Yeah.
Well, thank you for the service to the town and you stepping up to the position again. And it was nothing but good comments and praise for your work that you've been doing. And appreciate the fact that you're stepping up for another 3 years. All those in favor of approving the motion as stated, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
And I should have done that on a roll call, I'm sorry, because we have somebody on Zoom, but in this case.
Aye.
Thank you. Heather's an aye. Ariana?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
Aye.
And I myself also aye. So thank you again, Bob. 3 more years.
Peter, Ariana. See ya. At least on Monday night.
Safe travels.
On our appointments to the Planning Commission, it's going to be a roll call vote, and we're going to take them one candidate at a time and then go through. I would entertain a motion to reappoint Tim Roper for a 3-year term on the Planning Commission.
So moved.
So moved.
Second?
Heather is the motion, Ariana is the second. And can we have a roll call vote on that? Heather?
Yes.
Ariana?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
Aye. And aye on my side, too. So thank you, Tim. You'll be reappointed for a 3-year term. Appreciate all the time you've spent on the board and all the work you've done, and hopefully continue on from there.
Thank you very much, all of you.
Next candidate that we have for our consideration is Barry Pinsky, and I would entertain a motion to reappoint Barry Pinsky for another 3-year term on the Planning Commission. Is there?
So moved.
Second?
So Heather is the motion, and Ariana is the second. Any discussion on this? There's been a little controversy with Barry over the years and stuff. I feel that he's grown into the position. I think he's been an asset to the board. Part of the recommendation from the chairman of the board, who recommended that we keep the 2 members that are members now, reappointing, weighed heavily in our decision. It wasn't an easy decision. It was a little bit of controversy, and it was divided, but we'll see how the vote goes on this case.
There's 2 different terms, so you're reappointing for a 3-year now?
Correct.
All right.
So we'll take a roll call. Any further discussion on this? Anybody would like to make any comments? Take a roll call vote. Heather, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ariana?
Aye.
Peter?
No.
And Lee?
No.
And I vote yes. So Barry Pinsky, you get reappointed to a 3-year term on the Planning Commission. He's not, did he leave? Oh, he left.
He may be on the iPhone, I'm not sure.
Not his iPhone.
Could be.
The next subject that we're going to be voting on is John Cummings. I would entertain a vote that we appoint John Cummings to the Planning Commission to fill out a remaining term, unexpired till 2025, I believe.
So moved.
So Ariana is the motion.
Second.
Lee Gustafson's the second. Any discussion on this? As we go forward, depending on the vote on how this happens, it'll be obvious about the 3rd member. Both good candidates, both with deep roots in Vermont, and both with good intentions to help their town, which is always a prerequisite and really appreciated when people step forward to make an effort to become part of the town and part of what goes on here. So whatever the outcome is of these elections and these appointments, I hope people stay involved and still apply for other boards and still want to be a part of the town government as it goes forward. We'll start with a roll call vote. Heather?
Yes.
Ariana?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
Aye.
And I also. John Cummings, you'll be appointed to fill out the 2-year term till 2025. And Mr. Gorski, I definitely appreciate your time and your effort in putting your name in the hat here too. And don't forget us when there's other things that come up and other appointments that we're looking to fill, and hopefully you stay with us. Thank
Appreciate
you,
you coming forward.
Thank you. I look forward to working with you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Safe travels.
Next item on our agenda is to adopt our local emergency management plan. I believe this is basically a formality. Any big changes on this? Anything different from last year?
No, emergency services, chiefs and water sewer, all the department heads basically, get together, review our local emergency operation plan every year. It is due to be submitted to the state by May 1st. Other than renaming chiefs, and different people have been in different positions at this point, everything, at this time, everything would be the same. Yeah, everything else would
I
be the
did notice they do talk about a shelter, and it's just the American Legion?
Correct. We don't, Chester doesn't have, because of the requirements to be a true FEMA-recognized emergency shelter, we don't have a true shelter in Chester. We have warming centers, which have worked for us, but this is why that community services, that community building, since we're building it from scratch, we could build it with the stuff that it's needed to be an actual shelter, which would be nice. I know that Steve has expressed concern over that, businesses have expressed concern over that, so it would meet a lot of requests if we could get there, but, yeah.
So I have a question. We're the owners of the tower, right? Okay. So
Yeah.
one of the things that people said, and particularly during the snowstorm that wasn't addressed, is that there's no generator for the cell phone service at the tower.
There is a
And-
generator at the tower.
We ran out.
There is a generator at the tower.
So who is responsible for servicing the generator?
The carriers are responsible for servicing the generators.
But that obviously didn't work.
Well, they ran out of gas. They're set up for a certain amount of time. They're not required to have backup, and
Well, yeah,
most
but
of them do.
But we're the owners of the tower, and it's not so much that. And this is our emergency plan for the town, and that's how you really talk to people. Although I live in Smokeshare and it doesn't work, a lot of people spoke to me about the service going down. Now, as the owner of the tower, when we were talking the public service meeting, when they were talking about the tower that's up in Gassets, and they said, well, each carrier will have their own generator.
I don't think each carrier has their own generator up at our tower. I believe there is one generator.
There's one generator.
That runs the tower. I will say, from the guy's perspective, this is the first time that we have had a storm where we have completely lost. But the emergency services communication still remained because we have FirstNet. Not that that helps,
But there's a lot of people.
Joe Citizen, but,
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that gave up landlines for cell phones.
Yep, I understood.
And understood.
I
So,
understood.
And the landlines didn't fare too well either.
no.
I mean, storms are storms, and I guess you try to plan for the worst-case scenario and do what you can, but,
Well, and maybe something,
limitations.
right, and certainly something we could dig out those contracts and look at, Peter. But the management of the generator is not the town.
Not the town.
It goes to the carriers, but there is a generator up there.
All right. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I can get you more details on it if you want that. It's spec'd out in one of the contracts. Yes.
Excuse me. You need a motion on this one?
You need a motion to approve the LEMP, yep.
I'll make a motion to approve the local emergency
Management plan.
management policy procedure.
Plan.
Revision
Limp.
and, yeah. I mean, the actual policy is, it's quite long.
Oh, the all-hazard mitigation plan is a very thick one that's done every 5 years, yeah.
Is there a second?
Yep, I'll second.
Leaves the motion, Peter's the second. Any further discussion on this? All those in favor of approving the motion as stated, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? No. Next item on our agenda is discussion regarding, what's that?
Is it on the LEMP? It's on the local yeah, it's on the
Oh.
management plan.
Yeah, go ahead. I thought it was just something random in general, and I was going to say sorry.
Your reputation precedes you.
But if it's regarding a topic, yes.
So I'd like to talk about LEMP. I'm glad to see this on your agenda. Oh, Steve Mancuso, sorry. I'm glad to see this on your agenda. And if you bear with me, this last storm, there was a lot of conversation amongst the community and business members. It was all in the same direction. What can we do to help? It really was. you know, and I've talked to multiple people since. I spent a lot of time talking to the 211 ladies on their off days who educated me to 211. And 211 basically is the goods, services, and resources in your local community that you already know are available. There's a whole sign-up sheet that unfortunately May 1st every year that could be made available. You can go into 211 page, you can put in Chester's zip, and you can find out what is offered. This kind of takes the weight off of the 911 end of things. When these guys, you know, they're over their heads. There's no mutual aid because every other town is, or it's at a premium, is suffering the same consequences. They got to leave their families that in the dark to come serve. A lot of us know how that is. So somehow here there has to be a way to outreach to the community. The community, if you've been reading the papers coast to coast, these climate things are happening, are the last line of defense. There has to be a way to reach out and sign these people up that want to help. And they have just about every resource that you can think of. You just have to sit and play what if. What if this? What if we're Palestine? What if, you know, a meteor strikes Chester, whatever, you know? What are we going to need? How are we going to do it? Who has it? Who can we call? Or they use an app now, or whatever, how they're going to do it. Can it be on the 211 page? Get the weight of this constant disaster off your responders. Have them do the menial test. Think cat in a tree. Well, you know, there's plenty of us that you could call. We'd be willing to talk the cat out of the tree. Okay? There has to be a way that this comes to fruition, and if you're going to form committee to do so, I would like to volunteer myself. Okay? Please consider that. Thank you very much.
So can I just say that actually to this, so this was discussed last night at the Citizen Advisory Committee of one of the things that they would like to, because we talked about not just a citizens advisory to police, but a citizens advisory to public safety in general, because it really is one unit. And one of the things that several of the members discussed was forming these neighborhood groups, very much like what you and I talked about. So you will be hearing more on that, because that is an initiative that they are going to take up. So you will be hearing more. They are going to be reaching out to the Chester Business Coalition and to other nonprofit groups in town to start forming those connections. So they have your name. You're welcome.
You asked.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, thanks for staying up
You
past your
spoke to me
bedtime.
and I heard you, Steve, so there you go.
So it's the third Tuesday of each month at 6:30, Steve, for the advisory committee, and I mean, it sounds like a great conversation. Third Tuesday of each month, 6:30 at the town hall?
Here at Town Hall, yeah.
It's here.
Yeah, I will remind you at the next, for the next one.
I'll stop harassing.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
Composition of our local Cannabis Control Commission. We have the chairman here, Ariana, who would like to discuss this commission and her ideas on where it should go in the future and what's happening with it.
I can be very brief. When the Cannabis Commission was impaneled 1 year ago, the state regulations were not in place, and the town wasn't clear on what was going to happen. So we had a robust panel of 7, which has been great. However, the state has now pretty much completed their legislation and their organization, and they have created very little work for the local commission, to put it mildly. So a 7-person commission to consider what is really, I would like to use the right word, a perfunctory process for the local community to engage at that level. I don't think we need a full 7. Lee and Ben have both stepped down due to conflicts. If we were to stay at 5, and with me remaining on it, then you keep a select board member on the Cannabis Commission, which had been part of the founding plan. My recommendation to the Select Board is to consider modifying the Cannabis Commission to be a 5-person panel at its current 5-membership census. I'm very happy to take questions on that topic. I'm happy to see us put it to a vote tonight or bring it up on the next agenda item if there are concerns or more research required for anybody.
The work that you do now, Ariana, do you meet on a regular basis or just as the need arises?
We suspended regular meetings. We will meet as a need arises. We anticipate a meeting because we know we anticipate an application coming before, an approved license coming to us from the state for our approval. I believe once we successfully navigate that process one time, we might consider coming back again to revise how the commission acts. But until we've actually seen the process through, we're in a holding pattern. We could remain as 7 with 2 vacant, and therefore requiring new action, and I would be comfortable with that as a commissioner, and then I could come back to the Select Board once we've passed that year mark and bring it back again. Again, I'm open to you guys' questions or concerns.
It almost seems like a 5-member board would be sufficient to do what you're doing because it don't have that much power anyways.
We don't. I would invite Lee's comment. I would invite Lee's comment, but I can articulate that the commission, what the commission is able to do at this time is be a resource, collect information, pay attention, be an educational resource, a gathering point for the information, concerns, questions, and address them. Yeah. I am very happy to continue the commission in that role. If things don't change, I really think that it should be modified, but that could be a year from now.
Well, if we didn't have a local commission, it would fall into the hands of the state, because I think the state, not that, it still comes back to the fact that it's not that much happens there.
I think in 3 sentences I can sum it up. When you impaneled the commission, both the state and local towns believed that the towns would have an active role. As the state put everything into place, there was nothing left for the towns to do. So if you remove the local commission, it's exactly the same as if the local commission is there. So and I know this is on the record, but I reiterate that the role we can play right now is a resource, both for incoming entrepreneurs and town members, et cetera. But the state is doing it all.
Yeah. I mean, that could change by statute in the future if there was ever some law that came along that actually granted some authority to the town to regulate its own business, which would be unique.
And to speak to some of Lee served on the commission with me, and we had some good conversations. And to speak to some of Lee's concerns, the question of the town participating as other areas of the industry open up, so growers and manufacturers and everything else, there's not been an appetite for towns to get more. There's not been the pushback. The business is very comfortable at the moment with their relationship with the state. So both the industry and the state feel good about where they are. I don't see a lot coming back to town control.
So at this point, your recommendation would be just to let it slide to 5?
As the commissioner, we can either actively change it to 5 or allow it to operate as 5 until further notice. I'm perfectly comfortable either way.
The problem is if you leave it a board of 7 with only 5 members, your quorum is 4.
Yeah.
So if you ever have to vote,
My recommendation is that we reduce the commission to 5 members.
Are you making a motion?
Am I? Yes. I would like to recommend to the board, making a motion that the board alter the makeup of the Cannabis Commission to be a 5-member commission with 1 select board member on it.
I'll second that motion.
Well, can Ariana should you recuse yourself, really?
From the vote?
Because, yeah, well, and also I don't think you can make the motion, am I right, Arnie?
Oh.
I think anybody could make the motion. Now, whether she wants to abstain from the vote because of a conflict or she believes a conflict, that is up to her.
I will abstain from the vote.
And if she can't make the motion, I will.
Sure.
So,
The legal aspect of it, I don't know exactly.
I would just keep it clean and let Lee make the motion, somebody
Just in
else
case.
second. It's just clean.
So I make a motion that the local Cannabis Control Commission number of members go from 7 to 5.
With one select board member.
Does that matter?
It does, because in your original document it said it.
Okay,
Unless we
with one
change
select
that.
board member.
All right, I'll second that.
So Lee's the motion and Peter's a second. Any further discussion on it? It's been a long journey. It's, like you said, in the beginning, it seemed like there was going to be some substance to it and stuff, but if there isn't, it's in name only. And that's a shame. It really is. I mean, I understand why it's working the way it's working and the state's doing what it's doing. It always seems like they don't trust the towns to carry through with, what they would like to do.
There's tax revenue at stake.
Well, that's a whole nother discussion because we tried to get, 2% or 4% or whatever it was out of that 14 or 16.
I'm going to stay on top of that. It's letter writing and it's talking to Heather and Allison.
Yeah.
But
And it's not asking for a lot. And it's just the way it worked out because a lot of states do it a lot of different ways. And the local governments do get some kind of benefit from, having the establishment. And it's not much, but it helps. Any amount would help towards helping with the taxpayers and tax burden in a town. But any further discussion? Any other comments? All those in favor of the motion as stated, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody
Aye.
abstaining?
Ariana is abstaining, just so
Well,
that.
it was
just
a
so
hand
Susan-
motion, so
just
if you
so
didn't
Susan
see
has
it,
that when
she
types them.
abstained on that one. Next item is to approve a liquor license, McLoman's Scottish Pub. And because these are all computerized now, we don't need a motion on these.
You need a motion. You're not
This
going to
one?
sign.
But the entertainment one.
The entertainment you sign.
But we need a motion
Liquor
on the
license, you now
computer
need
one.
motions on because you're not signing.
So are we doing each one?
There's only one.
There's only one.
Outside
yes.
consumption permit.
Then we're doing it.
I'll make a motion to approve the liquor license for McCloman's.
Second.
Lee's the motion, Peter's the second. Any further discussion? It's okay with the police, everybody's fine, everything's good?
Yep.
All those in favor of approving the liquor license for McLoman Scottish Pub, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody?
Aye.
All set. Future agenda items, new business. Anybody have any ideas or any considerations they want us to?
You will review a bylaw amendment that is coming to you from the Planning Commission. I'm hoping you'll have a financial update for the first quarter.
Are we going to hear from our investment team? Some
From
point? When do-
Peoples, or
when do
from
we
M&T
normally hear
now?
from- When do
We
we
can.
normally hear from them?
We can. No,
But
it's
only
about,
once a
it's
year,
about
at
this
least.
time.
Okay.
It's about this time. I mean, they've completed their year, so,
Okay.
yeah, I can do that. I'll see when they can come. I don't know if they can come for the next meeting, but I'll
Yeah,
get
whenever.
them here.
So from the Planning Commission, the bylaw amendment, that's going to
The
be.
bylaw amendment, yeah.
Financial update in the Housing Committee you have on.
The Housing Committee, I don't know that I'll have that. I'd like to meet with the Planning Commission before I just, go off half-cocked, so.
Has there been any more discussion with the high school regarding student representatives on our?
Arnie, can you talk in the speaker?
The question.
Sorry.
Fine, Heather, I need to be reminded, because if I'm more than 2 inches away from this, it doesn't work.
Well, and I'm deaf.
The question was, has there been any more conversation with the high school regarding having a student representative on the select board?
So what they are going to do is, at the beginning of the school year, so in September, is when the high school starts their vetting process for students to be as representatives to the school board. So that will happen then
Okay,
for
makes sense.
for us as well.
Yeah. No. And when they have their discussion, as we get closer to that time, we should just coordinate to have our discussion as far as what the roles would be, how it would work, and the details surrounding it.
Absolutely. One of the things that Lauren is the superintendent is thinking is that they will vet they will advertise the candidate, or they will advertise the position along with the school board position. They will vet the candidates that they will allow to apply, because they have to meet a certain threshold from the student body. Like, let's see how she described it to me. You don't want just any student necessarily sitting up here, because there are some that are just simply disruptive. So there is a process that the school goes through to ensure that they have earned the ability to sit on a public body like this. They're very particular about that.
That would be
And it makes, I know.
It does, but it would be
I
interesting
know.
to know that process on
Yeah.
our end
Yeah.
also,
Yeah.
what they're using for that, because it
Agreed.
involves us.
Agreed.
And it's fine that they're following a process, but I'd be curious what that process
So-
was and how it worked.
So the way it was left is that we will touch base this summer. Yep.
I would still say if they're on the planet, if you had someone on the planning commission which is really open to a lot of discussion, that, for me, a high school student there, because we do a lot, here you do a lot of reaction business, but there you do a lot of discussion, and it would be so interesting to actually, have that student be able to discuss it and see how they see.
Yeah.
Because that's very different than the way we react here and things we have to vote on and
Yeah.
what comes through the general public.
Yeah.
And that discussion would prove incredibly valuable.
And that's interesting, because originally I was just thinking about the select board, but that makes sense about the planning commission or the DRB for that matter too.
Well,
just
the
to have
DRB,
people
see, the
involved.
DRB, you get in trouble because that's judicial.
Well, they don't have to have
They don't have to vote.
voting
They don't vote,
authority
right,
anyways. And if they go into executive session for something that's not for the public, they could be excluded, but they still could be part of the process just to see how things work.
Well, see, the
I mean,
planning-
that'll be part of the discussion when we talk about this later on in the summer as we get closer to possibly bringing on students.
I think that it feels like it could also be a good fit to have someone, if we identify a student or two, who does 3 months of going to planning commission meetings, 3 months of going to select board meetings, like,
Rotating
working with the school, obviously, we're not educators, but working with the school to figure out what program might work. But I think the idea of seeing both the planning commission and the select board, because they might know better than we do how both interface.
All right. Any other items for future agendas? And, back a ways, we did talk about the academy building and the property there and stuff like that. I know there's been surveys done about the property in the back. Originally, it was going to be cemetery expansion, but that fell through because of a floodplain and stuff. I'm wondering if we should start a conversation on that back property there.
Well,
Eventually,
it's so funny that you mentioned that. Do you want me to update you?
yeah, sure.
Since you happen to mention that, there have been discussions this week. So we had talked about a year and a half ago.
Intuition.
I know. We had talked about a year and a half ago about when we did the Village Center Master Plan, we intentionally excluded the green from that, because we felt that that was a separate standalone project, and that was the green in front of the Academy building and behind the Academy building. We're all kind of viewed as one space. So because there's been a lot of discussion, which you are probably very well aware of, about wanting to have a platform in front of the Academy building that's permanent for music, wanting to add electricity, wanting to do a band shell in the back, which has been discussed many times over the years, made me pull out the file that talked about the master plan for the Village Green. And so that was one of the things that I was going to come to you guys with at a future meeting. Scott Wonderly had some very early concepts about a year and a half ago. But just to bring it back to you guys for general discussion about, there's a lot of interest in from different groups and different people about things they'd like to do on the green, things they'd like to do in front of the Academy building, things behind. And I think it's time to kind of rally everybody together and really develop a plan for how we want those spaces to be used.
Well,
So it's planned.
The one of the base things that, meanwhile, I was in your office when I came in to talk to you one time, is if the service at the Academy building is only 100 amps, we could take a lot of small base steps, like getting enough electricity in the building in the first place. That's a small step that would then, can leverage things. It's not like you need to jump the whole hoop, but you could kind of crawl into it and just pick all the pieces up.
Yep, but just developing a plan, instead of a project here, a project there, a project there, and then how do they all mix together? And then you find out at the end that they really didn't. So,
Yeah, we've had, talked around this over the
Yeah.
years, but we never really sat down
Exactly.
and tried to decide what we were going to do. Ever since it got blown up, it couldn't be a extension of the
Cemetery.
Of the cemetery.
yeah. So it's resurfaced lately because I've had a lot of people coming to me with different ideas for the space. And so I kind of pulled that file back out and plopped it on my desk. So
Nice. All right.
I read your mind or you read mine, one or the other.
I'm
Brilliant
assuming-
people.
Assuming the solar field will be on the next agenda if we get
Well, I hope.
information. Okay.
Be nice.
Did you have anything you wanted to add? Julie had referenced, I know we're out of topic, but she had referenced that you had some information regarding?
Well, I think the communication that we got from Greenbacker about, is it Greenbacker
Yeah.
now? Okay. About why they didn't agree with our the assessment that we got was based on what they're calling standards for that type of facility. I don't know that I necessarily agree with them. I was actually going to show Julie something. So they have given us access to the website that shows the energy that field is generating on a daily basis, 3 days a week, a month, or whatever, plus lifetime. So I downloaded the lifetime, or took a screenshot of the lifetime production, and they're saying that it is making 925,000 kilowatt hours a year. And the lifetime graph disproves that. So those are some of the pieces of information that we're going to have to go through and say, wait a minute, you're being a little bit over optimistic here. But that's a discussion Julie and I need to have.
Thanks, Liz.
To be clear, Lee's going to talk at me, and I'm going to try to digest. Do not understand this stuff.
Anybody else have anything they would like to hear or see on future agendas? If not, we're going to go into an executive session for a personnel issue, and I would entertain a motion for that.
I make a motion that we go into executive session to deal with a personnel issue.
Second?
Was that Heather on the second? Or
That was me.
Oh, that was you. Leaves the motion, Ariana's the second. Any discussion on it? It's a personnel issue, and there will be no action.
There'll be no action.
It's just for
Are
information.
you gonna call me again?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, bye.
Ted and I can leave, I think we're the only ones left.
We have to call anyway because in order to shut it down, we lose her anyway, but it's good. Thank you.
Good night,
Have a good night.
gentlemen.
Thank you both.
You can shut Zoom right down because there's going to be